Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Moo, an online print and design company that helps you stand out and make a lasting first impression. Stand out like an IPO-bound idea at a hackathon with premium business cards from Moo.com. Moo creates premium quality, customizable business cards and promotional materials. The range of high-quality cards, top-notch paper, and exclusive design templates make it easy to create a business card as memorable as you. For extra wow, try Printfinity, giving you the option to print a different image on every card. Stand out with Moo.com. And by Wistia. Take control of your video marketing with powerful tools and analytics built specifically for business. Go to wistia.com/twist and get a free Wistia account today.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and today on This Week in Startups, Jalak Jobanputra is on the program. She is an amazing female venture capitalist who's been doing it since 1999. And we have a rambling, awesome discussion on this week's episode about a little bit about the Ellen Pao trial, a lot about how she invests, why she invests, and how companies are growing, and looking at a global perspective about how startups are crossing borders, M-Pesa, Bitcoin, Abra, lots of great name drops in this, and lots of great perspective on where the world is going. Really a global episode. Stick with us. It's an amazing episode.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Startups. This is the program where we talk about technology, startups, being a founder, an entrepreneur, and the process of building products and services that might, if the stars align, change the world. And one of the big topics has been, where are all the female venture capitalists, right? We had the big Ellen Pao trial that put it front and center. There are not that many female venture capitalists. So, you know, producer Jackie is an amazing 4-time Emmy Award-winning producer, and we were talking, we're like, we have to find every female venture capitalist, get them on the program at some point in the next year or two. And of course, Jalak, when did you start in venture capital?
1999.
Okay. So, Jalak Jobanputra.
Excellent.
Jalak Jobanputra. I got it. Jalak like Halak. That's easy for me to remember because I was going to Halak sticking on the top of my head. Jobanputra. You started in 1999 in venture capital.
Yes.
What was it like back then? And let's have like a frank talk about, since it is the topic of the moment, women in venture capital. It's changed a lot in 16 years, or has it?
Well, like I definitely see more women in venture at junior levels, more than I used to. But, I mean, there's just a Babson study that was done, right, that said the actual number of senior women in the industry has gone down. So it went from 10% in, I believe it was 1999, to 6% now.
So the senior positions have actually gone down, and there's a lot of junior positions. When we say junior position, what does a junior position in a venture capital firm actually mean in terms of what you do and how important you are? Because Ellen Pao was hired as not an executive assistant, but a chief of staff, which is kind of, I think, you know, like a souped up assistant, admin, thinker, you know, that pairs with someone like John Doerr, correct?
Well, not a lot of venture firms have that role, so
Yeah.
I can't speak to exactly, what she did.
Right.
But I'm sure there was a strategic element to it. I mean,
Yeah.
she did it after business school, I believe, so I don't think it
Yeah.
was a very junior role.
Yeah. She's definitely not an admin if she's got an MBA.
Right,
So
right.
chief of staff means something a little more than that.
Yeah, like when I was at Intel. So I started off in venture at Intel Capital, and Andy Grove had a chief of staff that, was a very senior person at the company.
Would write speeches, probably.
Well, that was part of the role, I
Strategy.
believe. and gets to travel, and make sure, everything's okay when he's traveling. But
what about those junior roles? What are those like?
So it's usually an analyst or an associate. It can be pre-MBA or just post-MBA. They're responsible for sourcing deals and doing diligence on deals. It really varies on the firm in terms of how much responsibility, how much decision-making power, or input they can have. And so I'd say the smaller the firm, the more, they're able to step up and be more of a key part of the investment team.
So when you were an associate back in 1999 in Intel...
I wasn't.
Oh, you were an associate.
I've never been an associate.
What did you come in as?
So Intel Capital, which is I believe the largest corporate venture
for sure.
Entity out there, has it was a strategic investment manager, but I was basically responsible for deals from sourcing all the way through sitting on boards.
Oh, really? So it is like being a partner.
Yeah.
So you started as a partner.
Pretty
basically.
much, yeah.
How did you get that done? Because don't you have to start as an associate?
Well, Intel just isn't set up that way because, what they were doing at the time, and I'm not sure how much this may have changed, but they're taking people with experience and then also people who can interact with their business units as well as, external investors.
And what was the climate like in venture capital back then? Because it's fascinating to me that the actual senior positions have declined. What do you attribute that to, do you think?
Well, I'm not sure. I do see a lot of drop off. I see, and venture in general has drop off between, junior positions and then who gets promoted up to partner. So, I think regardless of gender, there's a lot of drop off in venture where associates may leave, go get some operational experience, and maybe never come back. I mean, some of them just enjoy being operators more. And at the end of the day, venture is a slog. I mean, venture capital and a career in venture, it's exciting. I love it. Obviously, I've been doing it for 16 years, but it's not as glamorous as people tend to think it is.
Yeah.
And so it really requires, a lot of kind of resilience and loving all of it, right? All the, day to day of what you're doing.
So would the fact that it's maybe so male dominated lead you to believe that maybe that's why women don't make it to those senior positions? That maybe they're dropping off in a higher percentage than men because it's so male-dominated? Do you have friends who are females who left and said, gosh, it's just too much of an old boys club? Or I just don't like working with these people?
I have friends who left and went into private equity, which is interesting.
Even more of a plus.
There's definitely a quicker return to capital in private equity than there is in ventures.
Yeah.
So that goes back to really... enjoying the whole process and the longer time horizons that you're dealing with in venture. But look, there's any time you have a dominant, demographic, and I was a banker before I did venture. I was an entrepreneur after banking, but, spent 3 years on Wall Street. So I'm very kind of familiar with these male-dominated, strong culture environments. And, you do have to, a lot of stuff that came up during the trial, that stuff does happen, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully things are changing. And I think the trial was great in terms of shining light on, some of these more subtle biases. And most of the time they're not malicious.
Right.
Yeah.
So when she doesn't get invited to the ski trip and it's just a bunch of guys going and, hey, we're going to have a guy time, it doesn't sound malicious, but it is holding back people's career if you run it like a boys' club, doesn't it?
Absolutely, because a lot of the deal making and networking happens out of the office, and it's really key to build those relationships for a long career in venture. So,
see, I thought that was the biggest load of BS when I heard that, and the email said stuff like, well, we don't have enough rooms and the woman wouldn't be comfortable here. To me, that was some sexist BS because it's like, we're going to Aspen. There's not another place in Aspen for a woman to stay that's not, sleeping in the bunk next to the guys who are having a guy time.
Yeah.
It's complete BS, don't you think?
Well, look, I wasn't in the room. I wasn't, but I these things happen and they need to change. And I think the only way things are going to change, quite honestly, is just to have more of a balance. And, I love to see women come into the industry. I think women make great investors, and there are lots of studies that have been done with other asset classes on the returns that female investors get versus men. So I just want to see more of a balance. I like working with both genders. I'd love to work with more women.
So you like humans?
I like humans.
You like humans independent of gender.
You kind of have to like humans to be in this business.
So you talked before about like, hey, it's hard, and you have to, I guess, be resilient, and you have to be sort of made for the venture space. What is hard about being a venture capitalist?
I know.
Everybody else is hearing you say that and watch the Ellen Powell show. I was like, what's hard about making $500,000 a year and going to Aspen for work?
I'm running my own fund. I'm not making $500,000 a year. It's really, especially doing your own fund like I am right now. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, right? I'm spending just as much time working as my entrepreneurs. I mean, in some way, in a lot of ways, I feel like that I'm more aligned with them than I've ever been. And but it is. VCs have to fundraise, right? They have LPs and investors that they need to send updates to, and quarterly, financial, yearly audits, and so there's just a lot of similarities of running a fund and running a company. I mean, you are running a company, and so and then you have to do deals and manage the investments and be able to manage your time appropriately between those and know when you have to spend time with certain entrepreneurs, and that's where it becomes a real people business, right?
All right, when we get back from the commercial break, I want to talk to you about your portfolio and how you pick companies. What's your thesis after these 16 years as a venture capital when we get back with Jalek on This Week in Startups. And let me just take a pause for the cause to say thank you to our friends at Moo. They make amazing business cards, and they make amazing stationery, beautiful, thick, full of small little details that will help you stand out. Yes, Moo cards are different. They're designed to be delightful, and I use them myself. They have the little mini cards, which I'm a huge fan of. They have the Triple Vic Lux cards that are just gorgeous. And their latest edition is, of course, the letterpress. Those are the fancy old school type. And they've got a full line of business, stationery, and promotional material. And they all help you break through, start conversations, and look brilliant when you're in the marketplace. And they're all super, super affordable. And you can put a different image or text on every card. So if you're going to an event, that's what I like to do. Like when we go and have the launch festival, we might put 4 or 5 different pictures from the launch festival, different years, different speakers. Here's a picture of Mark Cuban. Here's a picture of, Glenn Beck or Chris Sacca on the back of the cards. And that is exclusive to Moo, this Printfinity, where you can put different images and text on each card and have a collection of cards. They have great designer templates, so you don't have to spend a whole bunch of money on designers. That was always the waste of money for entrepreneurs to go spend $10,000 on stationery. We used to do that in the old days. Now you just go to moo.com and you get it for just tens of dollars. It's super, super affordable, and premium is their standard, so everything's rich, thick, and lovely. Save 25% on all printed products and accessories when you order by Wednesday, April 29th. Yes, order by Wednesday, April 29th, and you will get 25% off on all products and accessories. Head over to moo.com, MOO.com, and everybody thank @MOO.com. I love reading ads. Yeah, I'm a lucky guy because I only read ads for things I love. I've been using Moo cards for 10 years, so I love them.
Moo's great.
You love them, right?
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah,
you can order cards. It's easy, and you can do it yourself in like 10 minutes, and it's fun to do it with the little builder. And it's just one of those very well done products. I'm so lucky to read a product for. It's like reading if I had to read an ad for my favorite restaurant, it'd be like, I love the steak frites here. It's like, I love Moo. It's my steak frites. All right. How do you pick companies to invest in? Well, you have to have some signaling now. What is your signaling? What is your secret to going, I can just tell this person's going to change the world, or this idea is going to change the world, or what is it?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the person and their vision. And I mean, you always hear about how important it's really about the entrepreneur, right? And because the markets are moving so quickly now, and there's so many competitors in any space popping up. So, one of the things I really look for is someone who's very passionate about their idea and the idea's ability to change the world, ability to sell other people on it, right? Because that needs to happen quicker than ever before in this environment that we're in. And then the idea has to be compelling enough. I mean, I spend time with my portfolio companies. I'm constantly thinking about them. I'm thinking about them, before I go to sleep, when I wake up in the morning, and I want to be passionate about what the companies I'm investing in are doing, and that's how I think I can also be most helpful. So, I get hundreds of proposals, even through my own network, each year, and that I really look at, how can I and the fund help this entrepreneur.
So you have so much deal flow after all this time that you have more than enough, qualified companies to invest in. You have to find one you're stoked about, to use a word.
Absolutely.
It's almost like a founder-investor fit.
I like that.
Like you have to be, because if you're not super stoked to go to work for the company and tweet about it and meet with them, it's kind of a bummer for everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm out there selling the company, when I'm talking to, potential partners they may have, or later stage investors, right? And I want to believe in that company just as much as the entrepreneur does.
All right. Tell me, what company founder, when they came to meet with you, did you, within a minute, know that you were in founder love, and wanted to invest in it? Like that, like when you fall in love and you're just like, oh God, I'm so in love. Like when you just fall in love with the idea and the founder, you're just like, oh my God, I have to invest in it. Yeah. Like you're not even it happened to me with Uber and Thumbtack. Like I wasn't even a minute into these companies, and Gowalla too. I was just like, God, this product is so gorgeous. I got to give this person money and go. Which one was the one that you had that with? Well,
there have been several over the years. I mean, one that you're very familiar with is Abra.
Yeah. Abra, we both invested in that.
Yeah. And
explain to everybody what Abra was like and take me to that moment where you met Bill.
So Abra just launched at the Launch Festival. Actually won. They won the
overall
award, right?
Yeah.
And they did a round about 9 months ago. Mm-hmm. And I met Bill while he was raising that round. And Abra is using the blockchain, so the Bitcoin infrastructure, to create a network of tellers around the world that are connected by smartphones. So kind of like an Uber for remittance and cash transfer across borders. I have spent a lot of time in the emerging markets and in Kenya specifically, which is kind of ground zero.
You spent time in Kenya.
I was actually born in Nairobi.
Oh, okay. And so then you definitely spent time there.
And I have invested in Kenya. Actually, one of my other portfolio companies is BitPesa, which is...
You're an investor in BitPesa?
Yeah. We just had a board meeting this morning.
Do explain BitPesa for everybody who doesn't know.
Let me go back to Abra.
All right, go back to Abra.
Let's go back to Abra. Right. So Bill is a very experienced entrepreneur in the cross-border remittance and mobile or cash transfer space, and that combination of this vision. When I first heard about Bitcoin, immediately I thought about M-Pesa, which is the mobile money system in Kenya, where a majority of the GDP actually goes through this mobile money system. And I thought this, Bitcoin and blockchain infrastructure can actually be the M-Pesa for the rest of the world, right? Where there are no real boundaries, that you can do these transactions on your phone with lower fees than if you were going through all these intermediaries. So he represented exactly, what I thought the real potential, or some of the real potential of this new infrastructure could be. And then you combine it with his passion for it. I mean, he'd spent a lot of time learning about Bitcoin and thinking about it in a really smart, strategic way of, how do you work with the current infrastructure and how is it going to, build over time. And then, all his experience. I mean, he's a grown-up founder who...
yes, he's not a 20-something. He's over 40.
Yeah, I have nothing against, first-time founders, but, this is a big, big vision. And knowing that someone knows the space so well, has been working in the space for a while,
you don't count it against them. You don't count it against them. I mean, the bias in our industry is against people who are over 40 starting companies. What do you think of that?
Well, look, I think San Francisco and New York, are somewhat different in that way, right? Because you have a lot of domain experts in New York who, have been in their respective industries of financial services or media or fashion. Any of these industries, they've built first careers and are now transitioning over to more digital.
So by definition,
careers.
they're going to be 30 or 40 or 50.
Right. And you do have the younger founders too, right out of school, who are building great companies. Also, I've backed those as well as older founders. And, so I think it's it depends on what they're trying to do, who they've gathered around them to execute on that. And what kind of expertise they're able to bring in if they don't have it.
Yeah.
Right?
So you mentioned M-Pesa before.
Yes.
Or is it M-Pesa? Pesa?
Well, it's pronounced. I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
So M-Pesa is, my understanding of it is, in Kenya, you buy minutes for your phone, and the minutes for your phone in some way equal the currency. And people don't have bank accounts, but they have minutes and M-Pesas on their phone that they can trade to do commerce. And then there are people who buy and sell minutes with cash and put them on your phones, who are like these virtual real-world ATMs. Am I correct in what I've read?
Well, they have. So they do have M-Pesa. So it's not just minutes, but they buy them as, they can use their account, their mobile phone account to buy M-Pesa.
Yeah.
So the digital currency, which then they can send to other folks who then redeem these and get cash at these kiosks. So if you travel to Kenya, you see these green M-Pesa kiosks everywhere. I mean, it's
How long has that been going on?
I think it was established they first started in 2004.
Wow.
So, I mean, a good 10
Isn't
years
it
ago.
fascinating that, like, I don't know if Kenya would, I don't want to use the word third world because I kind of feel like the third world is kind of an insult. What emerging market or not the sort of what you would consider the first world? What's a way to say it without being a jerk? What's the non-offensive word? Is there a world offensive?
Well,
say that?
I don't use. I try to avoid using third world because I think it's so silly in today's day and age.
But it is. But they're not like. It's not like it's the United States or
right.
Happening in London or Hong Kong.
Right.
They created a virtual currency and got it to market.
Yeah.
A decade before us, and we don't even have it humming here.
Right. Well, it's funny that when I was there five years ago, and I was just learning how it worked, and they were like, "Well, but you're from America. Don't tell me you don't have this there." Like we just got phones like about the same time. Mobile phones about the same time.
That's hilarious.
You guys did.
Is it state-owned M-Pesa?
Yeah. Or? So this is the distinction which when people try to replicate what M-Pesa has been to Kenya, it's hard to do so because they have it's a joint venture with Safaricom, which is basically a monopoly, right? Which is a telecom provider.
It's like their Verizon.
Right. Well, yeah, but you have AT&T here. I mean,
right. It's more like their SK Telecom, where they have 80% market share.
Yeah. I mean, it's a high amount of market share.
Yeah.
And then with so they. And then they're partnering with the bank there, so it's all state owned, and so it's all a monopoly, right? And
so a little bit controlled. There's not as much fear of fraud.
Right.
Harder to hack.
Yes.
Ostensibly, but maybe not.
Yeah, but it's
theoretically.
But when the system goes down, it halts the economy. That just happened a few weeks ago.
The system went down.
Yeah. And
what happens when your currency goes down?
Right.
I think
it's a very interesting case for, as we talk about digital currency and the things we need to pay attention to and impact it can have. That's a nice little microcosm of seeing, how to deal with some of these things.
It's truly scary because if you think about the Mt. Gox implosion, the early Bitcoin place, I knew of people who had significant amounts of money there, and it did rattle their lives to the point which it could be a run on the banks. When we get back on This Week in Startups, I want to talk a little bit more about this virtual currency and then take your questions, the audience's questions. And if you want to give us your question, just put @TWI Startups if you're watching on Twitter, and then or at Jason. You can follow either of us, and producer Jackie will give you the form to fill out. Let me take a moment and thank Wistia, which does an amazing job doing business-to-business video. Why do you need business-to-business video? Because if you use the free video services out there, what they do, and they're really good at it, is they take your audience and they convert it into their audience. So whenever you use those players from the other big companies, what do? Anywhere you click on it, it gets them back to their site where you're going to watch Gangnam Style and whatever other viral video, and they steal your users. Then at the end, they give you a promo for other related videos from your competitors. And then they have all your data. And then they don't let you collect emails. They don't let you put annotations clicking off to the things you want to do with your content. That's why we use Wistia, because we want to collect your email. We want to control the experience on thisweekinstartups.com, so you stick around and you watch our content. We're not here to market our competitors' content. We're not here to give the data over to some big, giant internet company. No offense to my friends who work at that big, giant internet company. I won't say their name. But Wistia gives us control of it. Just like we want control of our mailing list from MailChimp, or just like we want control of our websites with Squarespace. Wistia is in that class of product. It's a gorgeous, awesome product that I missed investing in, and I want to kill myself over it. I literally begged the entrepreneur to let me invest, and he's like, we make money. We don't need money. Don't you hate when that happens? And you're like, take my money. And they're like, well, we make money. Why would we take your money? I'm like, that's the reason I want you to...
VC's a tough job.
It is tough. I'm like throwing bricks. I'm throwing bricks. I got bricks of cash. Please take my money. Anyway, MailChimp, Moz, HubSpot, Zendesk, Herman Miller, Sam Adams, and This Week in Startups all use the amazing product that is known as Wistia, W-I-S-T-I-A. Wistia, 140,000 customers. And they, when they started partnering with us on This Week in Startups, they only had like 50,000. They've tripled in a year. Amazing analytics, trends, viewer streams. You can see down to the viewer how long specific viewers watched videos, if they went back and watched another section again. And you can capture email addresses before and after the video plays. So you could say, hey, before you watch this video, would you like to join our mailing list? You know what? We add dozens and dozens of emails a day. And when you have emails, you have power because you own your customers, not YouTube or somebody else. There's a reason why YouTube and Facebook will obscure and not let you collect email addresses, because they want you to be dependent on them and their ad networks. If you're a smart entrepreneur, you'll use Wistia and you get control of your own mailing list. Better to own 1,000 emails than to have 10,000 or 100,000 subscribers on YouTube or followers and likes on Facebook, where they're just going to make you pay through the nose to buy back your own customers. It's insane. Don't you think that's insane when they did that and they just make you pay for your Facebook friends again? I hate that. That's why you need tools like Wistia, so you can get control of your destiny. And by the way, they have tons of support, 24 hours, all that kind of stuff if you need help. New tools and features specifically for marketers, and you're not going to get that on Vimeo and YouTube. Tons of resources will help you get off the ground. Guides for choosing the right microphone, building a lightning setup for $100, using videos and emails together, all that stuff. They train everybody how to do it, and you can start a 2-week free trial. Wistia.com/twist, Wistia.com/twist. No credit card is required, and you can upload as many videos as you like. They're just a dynamite company and a fantastic product that will let you control how your content is distributed and help you build your direct relationship with your audience, which is critical. Thank you, Wistia. All right. I love reading ads for products I use. I had to get that off my chest about just everybody's like using these other people's platforms, and then they wind up... Yeah. You're like, have you ever talked to your customers? Like, I don't know who my customers are. It's like, well, it's kind of your job as an entrepreneur. What makes you crazy about entrepreneur? Like, entrepreneurs are hard to deal with, right? People talk about venture capitalists are hard to deal with. Entrepreneurs, I mean, you know, they became entrepreneurs for a reason. What are some pet peeves you have, like things that really entrepreneurs should focus on doing better that will help them succeed more? What are the common mistakes entrepreneurs make in your mind? And then we'll get into VCs and the mistakes they make. Yeah, how can they do a better job?
That's a good question. So I mean, what I see often from pitch all the way through, the company as it grows is just being aware of the competitive landscape and where potential competition can come from. And it's not the obvious ones, the folks that are directly in the market, but understanding, like having a more holistic view of the market, right? And so sometimes entrepreneurs, can be so heads down building and not looking up and seeing, what else is going on. And that's where advisory boards, where investors, if they're doing, their job, they should be alerting entrepreneurs to, or at least sharing a point of view of the broader market and where it's headed.
Getting out into the real world helps, doesn't it, as an entrepreneur? And we find sometimes they lock themselves in their offices and just go down the feature death march.
Yeah, this whole idea of just working 24/7, I don't think is healthy for the individual nor the business, and the outcome of the business.
Work smarter.
Yes.
Yeah, I always tell people, get out in the real world, talk to those customers. Yeah. All right, here's a question from the audience, and it's anonymous, but without a warm intro, what's the best way to get your attention? That's a good question. So warm intro is obvious. Like, hey, if Jason emails Jalek, or if Jalek emails Jason, that's a warm intro, like Abra. We might trade, deals like that. Yep. What's the best way to get your attention if it's not a warm intro?
Well, I do take cold intros, and they often come in through LinkedIn or somebody gets hold of my email somehow, and that shows some initiative. Yeah. But I have a blog. I've been writing in it for many years, since 2007.
The Barefoot Venture Capitalist. The Barefoot VC.
Yes.
Hold on a second. I'll take a little aside here.
Are you getting distracted again?
You obviously have not watched this program. Yes, we're going to get distracted. What is the Barefoot VC about? Are you retired on an island somewhere? What does this mean?
Well, I like islands. I like, look, I've done some pretty adventurous traveling in my days.
Really?
I hitchhiked around Burma by myself in 2007, right when the protests were starting, and they started while I was there. It was during this around the world trip I did, and went to the Himalayas and hung out there and hiked for a week, and have gone to the Congo, spent some time in Rwanda, went over to the Congo, got a driver myself, and
you went to the Congo and Rwanda?
Yeah. So
kind of dangerous, is it not? Or is it safer now?
My view is it's important to get out there, and the media reports one thing, right? And the reality on the ground, some of it's close, right? But I'm not going when there's an active war necessarily, but I think it's important to really see what's really going on. And that's where, the Barefoot VC comes from. So I wanted something that captured kind of who I am. And I also think the application or the link back to venture is that I think the best VCs are close to the ground. Like they're not somewhere and, sitting in some nice office complex somewhere and just sitting there day in and day out and taking pitches, but they're out there in the real world experiencing, what everybody else is experiencing, and that's how you spot trends. That's how you stay ahead of things.
Got it.
And that was the link back.
You're
to
brave.
VC.
I would never go to Rwanda or Saudi Arabia. Or any of these
Rwanda
places.
is very stable right now.
Is it stable now?
Yeah.
Any of those places that have like a State Department warning, I'm a coward. I wouldn't go.
Yeah.
You know why? My life is so good right now, and I work so hard to make it good.
Yes.
I don't want to risk it.
Yeah, I
don't want to go anywhere dangerous.
Yeah, but it could be dangerous just walking out the door, right? Like, I think you have to be smart when you're doing those things, but I think the media also blows certain things out of proportion.
I like the State Department's approach to it. Like, Mexico City, probably not a good idea for Americans. Cancun, okay, maybe.
Although that's been known to be dangerous around there.
Is it too? Yeah.
Yeah, but
you know what? I'll go to Hawaii. I'll go to Hawaii and Italy.
Hawaii is always a good option.
Hawaii and Italy. That's it. I'm not going anywhere dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm a coward. I have to say, I get invited all the time. I'm kind of really torn about the Middle East because I feel like I need to understand it better. This is like the most important there's a lot of important things going on in the Middle East. Yeah. Good things and bad. And I feel like I need to understand it more. But I also feel like I don't want to engage with it because I think it's so bad in some ways, like the human rights issues in Saudi Arabia and ISIS and this and that.
It's tricky, right? Because on one hand, you can say you don't want to engage, but the only way to create change is to engage and try, and so a few years ago I went on, I think it was the Aspen Institute asked me to be on a delegation when the King of Jordan was opening up the incubator space, the Oasis 500 there. And, I was amazed. This was like 3 or 4 years ago, and half of the entrepreneurs in that incubator space were women. And, the perception we get sitting here is that, it's a horrible, and they're obviously Saudi, and, there's certain places that are not so great for women and women's rights. But here you have a country smack in the middle of all of that, which, their ratios are better than what we see here.
It is really, it really is paradoxical, where you have some countries in the Middle East or even going over to Pakistan where like you just have this range of human rights.
Yeah.
One place is caning their wives and daughters. Another place is throwing acid in the faces of their wives and daughters.
Yeah.
And then the other places are having women entrepreneurs, founders, presidents, and in Congress and Senates and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at India, India is on fire right now from a startup and tech perspective, right? And so many of these, these companies that are getting funded are started by women, and that's, in a country where, you still have child brides, right, in the rural areas. So
yeah.
It is. But I do think that engaging and trying to support, where you can and help try to further some of that change, it matters.
Yeah. I'm obviously
I haven't
conflicted.
convinced
This show's
you.
not all about me, though, so we'll start with that. So when you get those warm emails, back to the question of our anonymous person here, so let's unpack it a little bit more. You get the LinkedIn, somebody gets your email, they guess your email, whatever it is.
Right.
They full contact it or do Reportive or one of these reverse lookups, who knows?
Yep.
Is there something in an email that makes it easier for you to say, I'm going to take the meeting?
Well, it is what I was starting to say before we got distracted was that, I have my point of view out there very much, what I'm interested in looking at, what I'm excited about, and the entrepreneurs I respond to are the ones that make a link back to, what my thesis is, what I care about, what I've written about in the past, and show how their company is addressing it. Sometimes the link is tenuous and I can pick that up, and other times it is a stronger fit. And so if I feel like they've done their research and, they're not, sometimes I get emails addressed to another VC.
That's always great when they cut and paste it. And they're like, Dear John Doerr,
right.
I'm a huge fan of your investment in Webvan.
Right.
You're like, I'm not John Doerr. And
Or I get a Mr. Jobin Putra, right?
Yes. Mr. Putra. You're like, Jobin Putra. You're like, Mr. Jobin Putra, was you reply back and say, I've CC'd my dad?
No, I don't. Well, he's Dr. Jobin Putra.
Oh, okay.
So, no, I don't respond to those.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd rather spend energy responding to the folks that, have done a little bit of
I think
research.
it's amazing. Like a Chris Sacca emailed today where somebody, he just emailed a quote. If I could just have 30 minutes of your time to explain my idea.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
And you're laughing. Well, unpack why that is so laughable for like people who are busy venture capitalists and angel investors. Why is that such a horrible approach?
Well, it's. If we were to accept that 30 minutes from everybody who asks for just a little bit of time, and that was pretty bold to say just 30 minutes, because that's actually a large chunk of time, right?
Yeah.
And we would never sleep. We'd be triple booked, right? The number of people, like my day is just spent like back to back meetings, right? And I try to spend Fridays to think and absorb and not take meetings because I think it's important to have that time. And it just shows a lack of understanding of what this person does all day and how. Even I get the 5 minutes. I just want to grab 5 minutes, or I'll take you to coffee.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll take you to coffee and pick your brain.
Right.
And, I would love to accept more of those, but it's just not possible to do that.
And the better approach is to understand who you're pitching, target your pitch, like you're saying, having read their blog.
Yeah.
Such a better approach.
Yes, absolutely.
And, a lot of VCs and investors will tell you how to approach them on their Twitter feeds and what works for them. To not actually do your research just shows like almost a level of cluelessness that would preclude somebody from investing in you.
Yes.
Because if I invest in you and then you start doing that to clients, they're going to laugh you out of the room.
Yeah, and that's a good point, right? The approach is very indicative. That's how they're going to approach customers or potential employees, and it's a kind of a maturity level of interacting with people. And
my favorite is I'm working on a project. It's called Abra. and it does money transfer. I know that you were very involved in M-Pesa, and you were born in Kenya, in fact. Here's what it looks like. This is an early mock-up in InVision. Please don't share it. And if this is of interest to you, I'd love to answer any questions you might have. I'm sure email would be the most efficient. Mm-hmm. So now you've basically said, like, I just want to be efficient with you.
Right.
I'm showing you the mock-ups,
Yeah.
and I know that you're interested in it. That's how I would craft the message, which is, I'm respecting your time.
Yeah.
Okay, another question from our audience. What advice do you have for someone who wants to land an associate gig at a VC firm? Please be as specific as possible.
Wow.
And that's from Arjan and Nathan. Arja Nathan on Twitter.
Great.
Andrew Jude is his name.
So I would say that it's important to know, like, if you're going to add value to a VC, having a point of view around thesis areas or, companies that you find interesting that you would potentially bring to the VC or even, that's in the VC's current portfolio, right, that you're particularly excited about. And that's one thing I ask, when I'm hiring, right? It's what companies in the portfolio, in the current portfolio, do you think are the most interesting? Which ones do you think are questionable, and why? And it's really what is the thought process of this person who wants to help pick companies or source companies? And I'd say be persistent. There's certain larger VCs that have associate programs, and they will list those. And I'd say get to know as much of the team as you can over time. And be in front of them and try to add value, send companies their way that they could be interested in. I mean, that's the, if you send a really great company my way, you're going to catch my attention.
That's a pretty good one, right? I sent you Abra, and then it's like, well, do you have any more? It's like a pretty good way to start the conversation.
Right.
But I do love the long game, getting to know everybody in and around a company. Yeah. The other thing I might add to that is be an expert on some topic, like really have passion and expertise, like the fact that you know so much about virtual currencies and have investments in the space and can speak to it. I guess what came up in the Inland Power trial was the thought leadership, right? Like when you have some thought leadership, it kind of does separate you, doesn't it? In this sort of very, limited attention time period we're in.
Yeah, I think also the ability to learn new areas, right? Because we are in kind of this high velocity environment, right? And I think adding value is also kind of coming up with new areas of expertise and being able to do that and showing that you have the ability to do that is important.
Okay, and so another question, would it be positive to establish a board observer program for women so they can gain experience in and having a stepping stone into corporate boardrooms as future directors? We have like another dismal sort of, and that's from Chris Nunelli on Twitter. We have a pretty dismal track record as well of having females on boards. How do you think we could solve that? Is this a good proposal here? Board observers, or is that? Board positions matter?
I think it's very important to have diversity on boards.
Yeah.
We've seen so many scandals kind of get swept under the rug because we have kind of this old boys, and it's not necessarily that they're all old boys, right? But this network that is very chummy with each other, and they really fail on the governance side, right? Of what a board is supposed to do and hold management accountable for different things. So I think diversity on boards is very important. I think there are tons of women who have the ability right now to serve on boards. They're just not asked to do it.
Yeah.
And so this whole idea if they need training, everybody needs training for their first board, but come on, the women are out there, and just try a little harder to find them.
And it does seem like because the venture capital industry takes the first couple of board seats, and it's 90% plus male, it's just mirroring that.
Yes.
And then that goes off and, perhaps makes the founders and the existing board have to reset at some point to say, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing more and more companies take on independent directors earlier on in their evolution than they used to, and that's also a great way to add diversity, right? So
When are you referring to that guy, Gurbachev Chahal?
Oh, Gurbachev, yeah.
Gurbachev.
Yeah.
You know that guy?
I have met him over the years.
Is he a true piece of garbage like he seems to be? I mean, tell me honestly.
I mean, I don't know him well enough, but I mean, I think, look, his record speaks for itself.
He's being
right?
sued again.
Yeah.
For sexism. I mean, this time he didn't beat the person up 140 times or something. But my God, talk about an insular board. They were supporting him.
Yes. Until it leaked. Right. And that's where, I'm very disappointed when that happens, because at the end of the day, I mean, if you care about returns of a company, this created more of an issue at the end of the day than if they had taken action earlier. I mean, they were hoping it would just get swept under the rug.
Yeah.
But, these things tend to come out when they're this
Yeah,
serious.
when there's a video of you smothering and beating your girlfriend and hitting her over 100 times, it's going to come out.
Yeah.
What are these people thinking on that board?
Right.
It's insanity.
Yeah. I really couldn't. I mean, I do believe it because I've seen this in different situations happen again and again, and it's
the cover-ups you're talking about.
Right, and hoping that the problems go away, but they rarely do, and it usually costs the money and the investor, the company and the investors money in the long term, right? And that's not being a good fiduciary, right? To the company or your LPs.
Okay, so tell me about your fund. FuturePerfectVentures.com. How old is the fund? How big is the fund? You founded your own fund after working. You worked for Omidyar too for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, so I was at Intel. I was at New Venture Partners.
Sure.
And
that's an old school firm, New Venture Partners?
Yeah, they spun out of Lucent.
Got it.
We were doing spin outs out of corporate labs, so really early stage orphan technology, and then incubating and spinning out.
Does that ever work?
It does, and
Really?
when it does, it works really well, right? Because you're getting in at the founding level, and then
So there's something inside the company that they're just not going to use, but they may have put $10 million into it, and they're like, "Hey, can you venture arm go get us some return on investment for this because we're not going to use it."
And I have to say, like, there's probably a time where that model worked better, and because there are a lot of companies that have these large R&D labs, right, where it didn't matter if some of that never got commercialized. So British Telecom, Philips and Eindhoven, IBM. I worked on some speech recognition technology out of IBM.
They were so far ahead of everybody in speech recognition.
Yeah,
My God.
I mean, the problem is that they never really fully commercialized it, right?
Right.
So all of these companies that had these large efforts and were open to having a venture partner come in and share the economics of founding companies that spun out.
What's the number one project that should be spun out of a big company right now in your mind?
Wow.
Any company, any project that would just be better off if it was a standalone company right now. It would go 10x, it would go 5x, whatever. If you could wave a magic wand, be on the board of and fund a company to spin out of another company, what would it be? A product, service? I'm making my list right now in my mind.
Oh my goodness.
That's such a good question.
That is a great question.
That's a good one. Oof, I got my list here.
I don't know. I have to think about that one.
Well, just take me through your process. What are some of the ones you're thinking of?
Well, I mean, I've been spending a lot of time in the financial sector, right? And so I'm just thinking through if there is anything, any ideas that. Because I feel like everything's been so proprietary in a lot of these larger financial firms, and it's not the most efficient to do that. So maybe there are processes or products that can be taken out.
The financial firms.
Yeah.
That would be brilliant.
Yeah.
So somebody's got like a fund or something inside of a financial institution or a product. Yeah. That could go out independently.
I mean, some software, you have to be careful because they consider everything proprietary. and that was always one of the challenges, because sometimes you'd show them the value of spinning it out and they want to keep it, but that they weren't going to be able to really benefit as fully from it if it's internal.
See,
if it went external.
That's the way to look at it, is what is being held back because it's inside of something bigger.
Right.
That would then on its own become so much more whatever. I immediately think of Amazon Web Services or YouTube. I'm a consumer guy.
Well, so it's everything that's been bought, and you know, and
You
then,
can take,
and
or
then you spin
but
it
web
like a
services is built
PayPal, like
internal.
the PayPal,
The PayPal
situation.
has to be
Right.
separated.
Right.
Okay, so back to your firm,
Yeah.
FuturePerfectVentures.com, Future PVC on Twitter. How many people work at this firm? Is it a firm of one? How big is it? How often do you invest? What's the footprint here?
Yeah, so it's me as a founder, and I've taken on a few like venture partners. I have a design partner who really helps portfolio companies with products because you know, a lot of stuff I look at, the thesis is around smart data analytics and decentralization. So there's kind of a lot of technology in these companies, and sometimes they really need help in figuring out, you know, product and user interface, and that's why Emily came on board. And then I have a great advisory board of folks, including Naveen, who was one of the founders of Foursquare,
Sure.
Deborah Estrin, who is a professor of comp sci at the New Cornell campus, and she focuses on M-Health, which you know is, I think, a very interesting area.
When you say M-Health, you mean mobile health?
Yeah, mobile health.
Yeah, how is that shaping up? Why are you bullish on that?
Well, we're seeing, and I think we're seeing a lot of applications. I mean, if you look at the Apple Health Kit now, that is aggregating a lot of our data in terms of steps, and then they're opening up an API where other companies can build on that data and integrate into it. We're seeing more and more people like collecting their own information, right? And I consider it, they're empowering themselves with their data, and so that data residing, at the hospital or the doctor's office.
Right, and it's new data that doesn't even exist in some cases.
Right.
Where does that all lead? I mean, if we take this next step to having our health record on our phone and we control it now, what's the benefit 5 or 10 years from now when we have, let's say we're a decade from now, it's always a good arc to look at for history. 10 years from now, we all have our data of the past 10 years, our weight, whatever, steps, blood pressure. Well, what's going to happen? What's going to change in our lives?
Well, I think
what's the opportunity?
What we need to do is not only collect that data, but analyze it. And I don't think the person should have to do it. I think companies are going to crop up that are analyzing this data in a very personalized way for this person. So if I know that they have, diabetes and have had a few angioplasties, and they're a certain age, then, and there's all this data on them, and what do they need to do? What day-to-day changes do they need to make? Like, are they eating the right things? And you're able to track a lot of that better, and we need to get better about tracking some of these things. And I think it's going to empower people to live healthier lives. There's a question on whether people want that right now, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Sure.
But I think we can take a lot of costs out of the healthcare system. Right now we're so reactive, and I think we can move medicine and care to a much more preventive model, which is better for individuals as well as the industry.
Let me ask you a big sweeping question, since we're on big sweeping ones like health. What do you think's happening in the world in terms of borders and employment and how work gets done in the world? Because you see a lot of the emerging markets. I think that's a better way to say it than third world. But like emerging markets versus the retiring market of Europe, the giving up market of Europe. Like we're not going to work. We're just going to go on vacation. The United States still seems to be thriving. Asia and South America seem to be, my gosh, they want all of our jobs, and they want success in the middle class to emerge. What do you see in terms of employment on a global basis with these startups? Because they are becoming very global in terms of what countries they operate in. Many are operating in 50 countries, 100.
Yeah, and that's part of the thesis of the fund too, is this global network that I've built over time is really valuable to startups at a much earlier stage than it used to be valuable. It used to be they got one market and then they go to other markets. And so with this employment question, I think this whole idea, the freelance economy, which is just growing, especially in some of, in like the U.S. and whereas I think the emerging markets are you're having multinationals grow in some of those places as well as startups. So I mean those countries are in a pure growth mode across the board, right? But I think this whole idea of this freelance economy and then all these services, you have Q and you have like Postmates and all of these that I think they have to figure out, how to maximize kind of the human capital that they're utilizing. I don't think they're quite there in doing that because there's a lot of churn. And so I just think we have to start thinking about work and the way people work very differently.
What will it look like? I mean, do you think people are just going to work 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week in cities and then go live outside the cities in, cheaper existences, which in a way is what happened in China, where people go to the factories and then take their long trade ride back to the north and, live for a couple of months, on the farm, as it were.
So it's interesting. I have a lot of friends, in the urban planning world, and we talk about this a lot because there's one group of folks that thinks that we're going to become more urban societies globally.
Yeah, right? And that has been the trend.
And that has, well, there was a time when people were moving to the suburbs out of the cities, right in the 70s.
Sure.
And now we're reversing that and going back into the urbanization. And then there are other folks who just believe that, because of the internet and being able to work remotely, that actually, we're going to see spreading out of people
Who's
to
right?
also lower costs. So, I'm a city girl, right?
Yeah. I like the city.
I see so many benefits of being in a city and having that density and that face-to-face. I mean, New York,
I love New York.
There's, and I think that's been a key factor in how, the startup scene has grown there is because of that proximity and the face-to-face.
Collisions.
Yeah. And so I don't think that's going to go away. And you look at something like Mumbai, right? And I spent a lot of time in India, and it's these cities are just booming, right? People are still moving into the cities. It's and so I think that's really.
How many people in Mumbai? Is this like 20 million people now or something crazy?
I don't know what
Tens
the latest.
of millions or something.
It's just like massive.
They're dwarfing
humanity.
like Manhattan's, 5-10 million people, and this idea that there, 10 million people come to Manhattan Island or something during the day, and there's 4 or 5 million there. It's like.
Yeah,
go to Shanghai or Beijing or Mumbai. Like
ride a train during rush hour there.
What's it like?
Oh, it's people hanging off, the edges and
on the outside.
Yeah,
literally riding on the top of the train.
In their work clothes. It's
It's madness.
It's great. It's great to see the growth there.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's something weird happening in the United States with, have this big debate over the minimum wage. Mm-hmm. And then you look at hiring for startups, and we both invest in startups that are not necessarily in a major city. And they're like, okay, one group of people is paying $60,000 for an engineer, and another group's paying $160,000. Mm-hmm. And you're like, it's the same quality of engineer. What's the difference?
Yeah.
And it's like, $3,500 a month in rent in one city.
Yeah.
And $600 in rent in another.
Yeah.
How can we have the same minimum wage in two places that have a 5 or 6 or 7x cost of living difference?
Yeah.
It's madness.
Yeah. And I can't believe, I come out here to San Francisco like once a month. I used to live out here, and I can't believe how the city is just, not able to handle a lot, from an infrastructure standpoint.
This place
right?
is completely dysfunctional compared to a place like our city in New York, like a real city. It's not. The San Francisco is not a real city. They run it like it's
like a village.
I'm gonna offend everybody. I live here now, but let me tell you something. If I ran this city, I would Giuliani up this city like you wouldn't believe. They're going to take this clip and run it when I run for mayor. They're going to Giuliani it up. But I mean it in the good sense of like, we're going to have mass transit that runs on time.
Yeah.
And that's efficient. And enough with the nonsense where people can't move around the goddamn city and everybody thinks they can have street parking.
Yeah.
In this city, people think they should be entitled to not only park on the street, but double park.
Yeah.
Like they're in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, or Bensonhurst, where I grew up. In Bay Ridge.
Well, let me ask you, do you think that the city was prepared for all the growth? Because the tech companies, a lot of them have moved north. Did they not expect it? Because I feel like, they weren't prepared for
It's a really interesting thing. I'm doing the research on it. I'm listening on Audible, not a sponsor of this episode, but has been a sponsor in the past. I love Audible, thank you. Audible, Season of the Witch by David Talbot. We got to make a note, Jackie. We got to have him on the program, Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie. And in this book, he goes over the history of San Francisco and how all these people came here in the summer of love. And all these kids ran away from home. And they camped out in the park. And the permissiveness and openness of this city is truly beautiful and one of its great strengths. It's also the fact that everybody believes that hippies and poor people and people with no jobs or whatever, like that recreational, like living outside is cool and groovy. They're like hobos. And it's like, so there's a camp that exists here over decades that feels like it should be a very open, hippie, society. And they're they're losing their San Francisco. And I guess that's a bummer. Just like in New York, when I grew up, we lost the Lower East Side, we lost the meatpacking industry, we lost to all these like people from China and Europe buying up all the apartments and not living in Manhattan. And it sucked. And I get it. It totally sucked for me when I was in New York in like the 90s. Like I had an apartment that was like literally $9 a square foot per year in a legal commercial loft that I lived in for years. And now it's like, well, everybody just moved to Brooklyn. The cool stuff's going on there. That's what has to happen here. And then people have to get okay with that concept that like the cool kids can move somewhere else and let the rich people take this part of the city, or the city can gentrify and keep growing. And then that has this trickle-down effect to everybody. There's more employment, there's more jobs.
Yeah, because I think that's the key, right? Managing it in a way that reaches everybody. And I just see this, like, this struggle that's happening here. And it's happened to a lesser extent in New York, but I think it's partly because of the management has been, pretty solid over the last decade plus.
Bloomberg and Giuliani, like you can, on the fringe, disagree with a lot of different things that they did, obviously. There's bad things too, but what they did do was really think on an operational basis of how to keep the city humming. And, you can take the subway an hour outside of Manhattan and find a place to live to this day for $800 or something, right? You can find an apartment way out in Queens or way out in Brooklyn or Staten Island and still come into the city and still be part of it. Here, like to get from the inner Richmond to downtown here, it might be an hour. And that's like five.
Isn't that what the Hyperloop is supposed to?
Yeah, I'm an investor in it.
Okay.
There's actually
there we go.
I'm an investor in the new Hyperloop company, but it's not going to work in city. It's going to be like get you out of the city. But that would be a really kind of interesting concept, actually, for the Hyperloop, which we've been talking about. I don't know how much I'm supposed to talk about. I got to talk to Shervin about what I'm allowed to say. But let's say you could have a drop-off point in Oakland, or let's say in the middle here, and it went underground. And I don't know what's east of here, but let's say 2 hours east or 2 hours south of here was a big, open, gorgeous, swath of land that nobody cared about. And you built a city there. You could literally build a city between here and Los Angeles and Hyperloop both ways and get into the city in under 30 minutes, 20 minutes, because you'd be going 1,000 miles an hour. It'd be insane.
Yeah. That sounds pretty cool. I guess the challenge is replicating. It's you're not going to be able to replicate a city that's been around for a while, right? And I mean,
no,
they've tried to do these satellite cities in places around the world. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Brooklyn was a satellite city. And people were like, when I grew up in Brooklyn, it was like, you were fighting to get out of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
They didn't want you in Manhattan if you were from Brooklyn. They were like, no bridge and tunnel.
Now they don't allow the Manhattanites into Brooklyn.
Yeah,
right?
No. When you went to Manhattan, I tell this story before on the show, and I would try to get into a club. I was underage, whatever. We had like fake driver's licenses. We would get our driver's licenses to have addresses in Manhattan, because when we first got our fake driver's licenses, or I got my brother's driver's license or whatever to get into the Roxy or the Limelight or the Tunnel or Palladium or Robot. I'm dating myself here. Cafe Society, Iguana, Odeon. To get into those places, if we showed up with the Brooklyn ID on the weekends or whatever, they would look at the Brooklyn ID, they hand it back to you and say, no bridge and tunnel.
Wow.
No B&T.
And I was doing that from Jersey.
Oh, forget it. Forget it. Jersey.
But I'm a woman, so it was easier.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was a little slightly easier, but now it's the exact opposite, right? Everybody, all the cool kids are in Brooklyn. So your fund is.
So I launched it a year ago.
Congrats.
Thank you. It's been great, and I have 15 portfolio companies.
Nice. What do you put? 50K, 100K, 250K? What's your average?
I do up to 500.
Okay.
Up to 500.
So it's sort of like a homebrew kind of situation.
I like to lead when I can. I've done a lot of leads over the 16 years.
Let's do something again.
Yeah, I'd love to.
We did Abra.
Yeah.
What else have we done? I saw you did Open Garden. They were a launch festival company too back in the day.
Yeah.
Explain what Open Garden does. It's a cool company.
So they have created this wireless mesh network technology. So you don't need to have access to the internet. Phones connect to each other in kind of like a daisy chain to then
Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to do that?
Yeah. And you don't have to actually pair devices the way you have to do with Bluetooth. This just happens automatically.
Right.
And so I've looked, there are a lot of applications in emerging markets for this, where there's not internet access always, or in crowded stadiums like the stadium, the 49ers stadium.
Sure.
I mean,
the Wi-Fi goes down, nobody can communicate.
So this would remedy that.
The interesting thing that I think they're working on is this messenger, right, where you're going to be able to message with each other. And then let's say you and I are offline, but Jackie's online, and then Jackie, all of our messages can be synced and encrypted.
Yep.
But then the first time somebody gets online, we could be communicating with each other in the stadium over this mesh network connected over Wi-Fi automatically because we all have the app. But then the second one of us gets an outside line, all of our messages go out like in a store and forward kind of way, which would be so brilliant for like the emerging markets where we could all be just sitting here texting and trying to get our messages out, and then somebody takes their bicycle up the road, hits the whatever satellite Wi-Fi, and everybody gets their stuff delivered. What other things in your portfolio are just breaking out? What do you have a lot of hope for?
Well, I think BitPesa is very interesting.
What is BitPesa?
They're creating a Bitcoin network for Africa. So they start off in Nairobi, where as we've talked about, mobile money is. I mean, people are used to transacting, with their phones, and so just trying to get people to start using Bitcoin infrastructure to do remittances, so in and out of the country, and it could be in and out of Africa or Pan-Africa. I mean, it's expensive to transfer money within Africa too, from like Nigeria to Kenya or Kenya to Tanzania, and there's really no solution right now outside of like a Western Union, and BitPesa can do it for less than it's probably around a third of the fees.
Right.
And it's also where they're getting a lot of traction too is with businesses, who need to pay employees in Kenya from Europe, or this cross-border payment flows, and so. That's one that I'm very excited about because, again, it's like an Abra where, really showing the promise of what digital currency can do. There's one that will be announced in a couple weeks, which stay tuned. I'm extremely excited about that one.
Ooh, we can break some news here.
Yeah.
Break a little news here. What's the vertical? Tell me the vertical.
No. It's
the general e-commerce.
It's in hardware. Let's just say hardware.
Hardware. Okay, that's fine. That's
hardware.
fine. I like hardware.
Yeah.
Are you scared of hardware as an investor and the capital intensity of it?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I think.
Why are you not scared?
Look, I think you need to find entrepreneurs who understand how hard it's going to be.
So it is harder.
I do think it's harder. I mean, you asked if I was scared of it.
Right.
No, I'm not scared
of
a lot
hard
of
work.
things.
Yeah. So it's harder.
Yeah, it is harder, and I think that's where you have to make sure the team grasps it, right? Like we've seen so many companies, do these Kickstarters, right, for hardware products and not deliver for, how much, like they're ones that haven't delivered for over a year past their promise date and have collected money and
collected venture capital money after that and still can't hit it.
Yeah. So
it's kind of disturbing.
Yeah. And so it's really important to make sure the entrepreneur understands the economics and really, I mean, I think entrepreneurs always underestimate, dollars that are going to have to go into, hitting that huge market share that they're projecting, right? And hardware, I think you have to build in even more cushion because there's more that can go wrong in the actual, device or product. So
yeah, it's interesting. I've met with a lot of hardware companies that did successful Kickstarters or Indiegogos or Tilts, not picking on any one of those platforms, but they did their budget. They went way past their goal, and then they started to execute and realized, oh, well, we did 500K, let's say. We really need 1.5 to actually make this happen. We're going to lose literally $100 on every unit we ship for 200, or we're going to lose 200 for every dollar because they're like, oh, we have to build the app. Oh, we have to build the infrastructure. Oh, we have to build the server. Oh, we have to have customer support. Yeah. They're just like, well, we can build this for like $100, so we'll sell it for 110, and we'll make $10. And it's like, well, who's going to build the app? Oh, I didn't think of that.
Right.
Who's going to pick up the phone and take it back when it's broken?
Yep.
It's kind of scary.
Yep, and which leads me to another company I'm excited about.
Okay,
when you're
tell me.
talking about customer service,
Yeah.
there's a company called Fuse Machines, and they're based in New York.
Fuse Machines. What do they do?
Yeah, and they have built an artificial intelligence, natural language platform for customer service automation. So it's kind of like next generation of what call centers do, and can empower call center folks with better information and searchable information at their fingertips, or can interface directly with customers on an AI basis, and then know when to switch over to human interactions. So it's
that's
pretty
brilliant.
clever, right?
Yeah.
So that, like when you talk to the machine for the third time asking the same question, they understand that
They're like,
it's time to
does
move
it know
on.
when you have that frustration in your voice and you're just
Yes.
like,
They're getting there.
they'll be like, when you're like, no.
Operator.
Operator. That's me when I get on those things. I'm just like 0, 0, 0, 0. Operator. I don't want to press any buttons. Don't put me down your menu. And you're an investor in the Muse, Catherine
Yes.
Minshew's company.
Yes.
She's been on the program.
Oh, she's great. So
she's a
she
dynamo.
was one of those entrepreneurs that I
Can't say
met
no to.
a long time ago. Just loved her persistence, her vision, and also her willingness and wanting to learn, and grow in areas. I mean, she's always been like, a superstar in my mind, but like what she's learned over just the last couple of years or 3 years since I met her, and how she incorporates feedback, I think is something that, all entrepreneurs, it'd be great if all entrepreneurs did that.
Yeah, she's a dynamo.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you something while we're wrapping up here. When you heard the Ellen Powell verdict, where were you and what was your reaction? How did you feel as a woman VC?
People keep asking me that. And the lawsuit was filed 3 years ago,
Yeah.
right? It's been out there for
Yeah.
a while. It's interesting, like being in New York. So I was out here, like in the middle of March.
Yeah.
So while the trial was going on, I was out here for meetings, and everybody was talking about it. It was, it was in
Talking about it like face to face, but
Right.
not on Twitter and not on
I
blogs.
guess that's true. But in Coupa Cafe, every single table was talking about it,
Yep.
and it was fascinating. Where in New York, I'd say a lot of people I talked to were not even aware it was going on. So I think there was definitely more attention here.
Sure.
Obviously because it was taking place here, and so many people are, affiliated with the parties
Yeah, the
involved,
principles, right? Yeah,
right.
people who were, I knew, like, I was like watching the people testify. I was like, I know that person, I know that person, I know that
Yeah,
person. Wow,
right.
this is incredible.
Yeah.
It's like the trial of the century for Silicon
Right.
Valley in a way.
Exactly. So I wasn't surprised by the verdict.
You thought she was going to lose.
I think it's a very hard distinction to make. If you look at what the jury was being tasked with, right?
Right.
And it's hard to directly link the discrimination to the lack of promotion, et cetera.
Right.
Especially in an industry where there's not a lot of documentation around this, and and so no, it didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was the amount of attention being paid to it, and I think versus when the lawsuit was first filed, I think a lot of things have happened in the market, right, where that make people pay more attention to this.
Sure.
The diversity numbers were released in Silicon
Yeah,
Valley,
they were pretty brutal.
and so all of that's been picked up and gotten a broader audience than just like
Just
the
that
folks
one case,
right? And so I think it's a moment in time where it does matter. And then you have Hillary Clinton running for office, and so and the gender pay issue that's been in the news, right? So it's a lot of things that have accumulated.
There were some people who were crushed by her not winning. They felt like she deserved to win. Did you think she deserved to win, or you don't know enough?
I don't know enough. I wasn't in those rooms. I'm in the industry, but I've never worked at that firm, and
But Kleiner has a lot of women working there, is I think what a lot of people said. Like,
Yeah.
this is the most diverse of all the funds, except for the female-led ones, obviously. Do you think Kleiner is like Do you think this is like, if any firm was going to be singled out, this is the wrong one to single out?
I hear that again and again.
Yeah, because that has nobody wants to bring that up, by the way, right? But I want to have a
right.
frank discussion here. I'm not saying that's my position either, by the way. Just.
But, look, I mean, a lot of the stuff that went on was egregious, right? Regardless of which firm it was. I mean, some of those things need to change, right?
Like the guy who she had the affair with, that guy was like a predator on the prowl.
I mean, again, I don't know, but there's
well, he clearly was. It was documented that he's banging on people's doors in the middle of the night.
There's certainly characters like that in many different industries, and I've encountered that sort of thing repeatedly in my career.
Really?
So,
did you punch the guy in the face, or do you just as a woman? Let me ask you seriously. Like, do you want to just punch these guys in the face, or do you just have to kind of like laugh it off and brush it off and be like, no, and like, because you don't want to stir the pot and create a big issue out of it because you want to stay focused on your work?
Well, I think, the key here, and when I talk to male friends about this, right, is that it's not just one event that happens, right? Like women who are at a certain point in their career, most likely, if they're in a male-dominated world, have encountered many of these different, which on their own, I mean, some of these, on their own are a big deal, but are not a big deal. Like day to day, right? But there are enough of those where you realize there's a culture here. That's not the most welcoming for other folks, right? And it can be women, it can be people with accents, it can be lots of different things. People who didn't go to certain schools, right?
Yeah, I mean that was was that the famous Paul Graham quote where it's like, if you have a thick accent, it really is hard to raise money. I think he said that, right?
Yeah, I think he said that. Yeah.
How did you feel when you heard that one?
I look. I agree with a lot of what's said out there, and I don't know. Again, things are taken out of context, right?
Yeah, I think that was the key with him. I think it was taken out of context.
Yeah.
He was saying like,
it is like the reality is it can be harder, right?
If I'm operating in Japan, and I think his point was like, if I was in Japan and my partner's Japanese and is a native speaker,
right?
And you go to a pitch meeting, let the Japanese guy or woman talk, and the English person would maybe do the Q&A.
Yeah.
But if your accent is so thick that nobody can understand you,
right.
like let somebody else on your team present,
he was
work on it.
About the communication and how important communication is. Now, I would like to live in a world where a lot of this doesn't really matter. That and I actually think that's where one of if you look at where I think my fund adds a lot of value is the fact that I've done business in I don't know how many different countries. I've heard I don't know how many different accents. I'm I didn't speak English when I moved to this country, right? I learned it while I was in school.
Oh, you didn't?
Yeah. And,
how old were you when you got here?
5, yeah. And,
oh my God, it's my daughter's age. Do you remember having to struggle with it or what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. English is supposed to be an easy language to learn, but I had trouble with it. but I grew up in a neighborhood where there wasn't much diversity, and so I'm kind of used
Jersey.
to in the 70s.
Where in Jersey were you from?
A small town called Branchburg.
Okay.
A lot more diversity now.
Yeah.
It's in Somerset County, but
I used to go to Ridgewood, New Jersey in the summers. But were you in northern Jersey or
central?
Central,
so literally right between Philly and New York.
Yeah. And so people were just like, who is this person?
Right. So
and where are you from? And making fun of your
to,
name. They never heard your name before.
Yeah. Well, my brother had it much worse. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why?
But his name translate. Yeah. I probably can't say it.
Why not?
Oh.
You can say it. I mean, unless it's up to him, he doesn't want to say it. I don't care. Who cares?
But I'm just saying, when you come from that kind of background of having experienced it, you're a lot more sensitive to it.
I remember the 70s. We I think we're probably the similar age. I grew up. I was born in 1970, but I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and it was there was definitely diversity isn't like it is today, where these young people don't. These Gen Y people, this Earth Connected generation, they don't see race the same way because there's so many mixed race kids.
Yeah, it's great.
It's awesome.
It's just so great to see how far we've come in not that long of a time, right? So.
Yeah, I think when we're when we're grandma and grandpas and we're the old people at the table at Thanksgiving when we're 80 or 90, just like my grandmother and God rest her soul and our grandparents were they were the last racists in our family. We're oh my God, Grandma, don't say those kind of things. One time she said something unbelievably offensive. She literally said the N-word at Thanksgiving. I mean, she had like dementia towards the end, but like literally, my 90-year-old grandmother says the N-word at dinner. I'm with my Puerto Rican girlfriend
Wow.
at dinner, and everybody's just like, Grandma. You know, like, and I think that's like the last generation. Like, they're gone. You know, like nobody thinks that way. And then, how can you be racist if you're multiracial?
Right.
It becomes kind of hard, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's kind of a wonderful place we're going.
Yes. And, I think technology is a big connector of all of us, right?
Yeah.
And it has been great in that, there's been a lot that's come along with it where, we have to be careful and guide it, I think, in the right ways.
Yeah. God, I hope we live in a post-racial world. It's like we're kind of like going to be this last... We might see it. Like, I think we're kind of getting there. You see all these poor black kids getting shot on television by cops. It's kind of makes you...
Yeah, I think sometimes
wonder.
when you're in places like San Francisco or New York...
Yeah, you get a different view of the South.
You're living in... in unique places, right, that are sometimes closer to like a London or Mumbai than it is to, somewhere
in the
middle of the
South.
country. So
kind of crazy.
I think, we've come a long way. We have a long way to go, and I think we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I love this idea of like the VCs who can see across the borders. I think that's a huge advantage for the companies that align themselves with you. Disadvantage for aligning yourself with me because I don't know anything and I'm afraid to go to other countries.
But we'll co-invest, right?
You'll co-invest. You get the best of both worlds. You get the kid who's from Brooklyn and you get the girl from Jersey. All right. Jalek Jobin-Putra, I could have you on the program every week. This is great to talk with you. You're good. You have an opinion. You're good for radio.
Oh, yeah. I love
Anybody ever tell you you're good on radio? Like, you're good.
Oh, well,
You're good. You have an opinion. You're willing to talk about stuff. It's good radio.
Lots of opinions. I'd love to be back.
Yes, absolutely. So everybody follow Jalek. Jalak. Jalak.
Absolutely.
Jalek.
Yes.
There you go.
It means glimpse in Hindi.
It does mean glimpse in Hindi. Wow, that's unique. And Jason means nothing in Greek. It just means Jason and the Argonauts. Actually, you know what? I think I'm a hero. I think Jason and the Argonauts. I mean, technically, I'm a hero. I'm not like a god or like a son of a god like
Okay,
Hercules.
I'm going to quote you on that.
But I'm a hero. I'm a hero. That's
not
like
a god.
That's a third level down. We're 80 minutes in. My producer's going to kill me. Thank you so much, Jalek, for coming on the program, and thank you to Jacob and Jackie for producing the program. And all of you should thank Jackie and Jacob for producing the program. They do such a great job. Follow the show at TWI Startups, and thank you to Moo and Wistia for making independent media like This Week in Startups possible. We couldn't do it without you. Thanks to WeWork for giving me my great office here and my beautiful studio. Such a great group of people. If you want to work at a WeWork, they're in like every city and growing like a weed. They raised a ton of money. Just great people work at that company. And why would you like sign a huge lease when you can just rent desks for $500 or $600 and a little tiny office that's beautiful and gorgeous and yours, and you can lock the door? I love WeWork. There's a lot of WeWorks in New York.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. A lot of your startups are in WeWorks, huh?
They're replicating quickly, yes.
It's so much better than back in the day when we had to like go argue with the landlord and sign these huge leases and give off. We literally had to give like maybe 25% of our cash or a third of our cash up front to a landlord, which should put it in a goddamn like note that we wouldn't have control of for 5 years. That made like 0.5 interest.
Yep.
Oh, so horrible. Thank you, WeWork, for solving that big pain point. And we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.